It was only 2 weeks ago that I sat in front of this very camera making the decision about which Thor I should buy with my own hard-earned money. And I'd love to be able to get every single retro device out there just to make videos about them. But when AYN announced their latest handheld, the Odin3, and I opened my wallet, my credit card leapt out, ran down the garden path, and I've not seen it since. The Odin3 looks really impressive on paper. Though to be fair, most things look really impressive on paper when the marketing department gets their hands on it. The spec sheet reads like somebody fed a tech journalist nothing but energy drinks for a fortnight and then told them to describe their fever dreams. But despite all of that silicon wizardry, there are some compelling reasons why I've decided that this new high-end Android device isn't going to be making its way into my collection anytime soon. I thought it might be the perfect device for some of you. Perhaps it will be. Perhaps you've just got more self-control than I do and you've saved up some money for the next high-end thing. Perhaps your credit cards are better trained and don't bolt at the first sign of a crowdfunding campaign. Now, AYN's built up quite a reputation in the handheld space, releasing devices with the regularity of a Swiss train timetable, if Swiss trains occasionally arrived 6 months late, but were absolutely brilliant when they finally turned up. They've got a loyal following who treat each announcement like a religious experience, complete with the ceremonial clicking of the pre-order now button. The thing is, this chipset on this new device, whilst it's really impressive, is so new that they haven't cut the umbilical cord yet, and it still needs to have its inoculations before it gets to go home from the hospital. And right now, the emulation community is essentially volunteering to be the hospital staff. Also, I've already got more handhelds than a small arcade, and my desk has started to resemble a museum exhibit entitled The Evolution of Portable Gaming, a Study in Consumer Weakness. Adding another device to this collection would either require a larger desk or a smaller ego, and frankly, both seem quite unlikely at this point. But here's what you actually need to know about this thing before the early bird window ends entirely, or if you're buying it a little bit later on. Because whilst I might be sitting this particular dance out, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't stand up for one last waltz. The Odin3 represents something incredibly exciting. So let's take a look at this new kid on the block as we ask whether this is a bad bet or whether this device is Odin all the cards. Let's start with what AYN absolutely nailed, because this thing is genuinely impressive and represents a massive leap forward for Android handheld gaming. And let's be clear, none of the issues that I'll discuss later are AYN's fault. They are building excellent hardware as they always do. But they can't solve software problems that are beyond their control. The Odin3 is packing Qualcomm's brand new Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, which I seem to have trouble saying for some reason because clearly I got drunk in a past life and it hasn't worn off yet. It's a 3nm chip with an Orion CPU core that hit 4.32 GHz and an Adreno 830 GPU expected to outperform the 8 Gen 3 by a healthy margin. We're going from a sports car here to a fighter jet, which honestly sounds far too good to be true. And you know what they say about things that sound too good to be true? They usually involve crowdfunding campaigns and shipping delays that make waiting for Half-Life 3 seem reasonable. The display is another highlight, a 6-inch AMOLED panel running at 120Hz, likely the same premium panel they put on the Thor. The 1080p resolution hits that perfect sweet spot where you get crisp, vibrant visuals without completely murdering your battery life. That 8,000 mAh battery should keep you gaming longer than it takes AYN to actually ship the things in the first place. The active cooling system is also quite exciting, if you get excited about active cooling. But look, if the Odin3 maintains the same level of sophistication as the Portal, you're going to have a fantastic thermal experience. Although for me, a fantastic thermal experience is when you take a sip of coffee and it doesn't burn your mouth. Having said that, early Snapdragon 8 Elite devices have shown some thermal challenges that even a good cooling system might struggle to address. AYN has also packed in premium features, Hall effect analog sticks, DisplayPort output for 4K external displays, Wi-Fi 7, and up to 24 gigabytes of RAM on the top spec, which is more memory than most of my college buddies had the last time we had a reunion. This represents the absolute cutting edge of what's possible in Android handheld gaming right now, although cutting-edge hardware doesn't always mean cutting-edge gaming experiences on day one, as we'll soon see. The main reason for that is the driver situation. The Snapdragon 8 Elite is so cutting edge right now that many games simply don't work properly. We're talking Switch titles that won't boot, GameCube games with broken textures, even PS2 emulation having stuttering issues that the older 8 Gen 2 just doesn't have. As friend of the channel Ryan Retro put it, the Elite is an absolute mess right now. People have to go to great lengths to try to create their own compatibility because we don't have any. Now, Ryan is somebody whose opinion I really value, and he has an Elite 8 phone. And at the time of recording this, he's testing some games out to see how things stand. Once his video drops, I'll leave a link in the description, because I think that's going to be a really important thing, to see if what you're thinking of buying does the thing that you think it's going to do. But what we know at the moment is that early adopters are essentially paying to be beta testers for the entire Android emulation ecosystem. The community is working hard on custom drivers, and there are promising developments, but right now you're buying potential rather than performance. And this could all change in 6 to 8 months as community driver projects mature, but today you'll spend more time troubleshooting than gaming. What does this mean in practice? Well, take Pokemon Legends Arceus, a game that runs beautifully on the 8 Gen 2 devices. On the Elite, you're looking at black screens, white screens, and crashes until you hunt down a specific custom driver and a patched emulator build, and even then, you'd be lucky to get 30 frames a second. Or consider Pokemon Colosseum on the GameCube. The 8 Gen 2 handles it smoothly, but Elite users are dealing with broken textures, blue visual glitches, and needing to enable demanding workarounds like exclusive Uber shaders just to make the game playable. Even basic PSP emulation through PPSSPP, something that should be trivial on hardware this powerful, has users reporting random stutters and crashes that simply don't happen on older chipsets. The community is actively working on solutions. There are custom turnip drivers, extracted Qualcomm blobs, and patched emulator forks that can get some of these games running. But right now, you're not just tweaking settings for better performance like you would on an 8 Gen 2, or even on the earlier chipsets as well. You're troubleshooting basic compatibility just to get games to boot. If you're the type of person who enjoys being part of that problem-solving community, then the Elite could be exciting. But if you want to spend your time playing games rather than fixing them, the mature 8 Gen 2 ecosystem gives a lot more sense right now. Given these compatibility challenges, the pricing structure becomes even more important to consider. The $299 early bird price for the base model is a genuinely fantastic deal until you realise your favourite games might not actually boot. And after that early bird window, retail prices start at $349 and go up to $549 for the top configuration. And when you factor in shipping, taxes, tariffs, and accessories, you're approaching the price range of established alternatives like the Steam Deck. A brand new Steam Deck OLED starts at $549 and offers a completely different but mature experience with native PC gaming and a massive proven game library as well. The emulation scene there is also incredibly well developed, offering excellent emulation performance with significantly less risk and uncertainty. The Odin 3's impressive power mainly shines with more demanding scenarios like Windows emulation through WinLater, or maybe PS3 emulation in the future. Both are exciting possibilities, but right now you're paying a premium price to essentially alpha test compatibility rather than to actually play games. But I'm pretty sure that many of you will still be looking at the Odin 3 glued to your monitor like a Victorian child at a sweet shop. And look, I understand the appeal. This hardware is excitingly impressive, and when the software ecosystem catches up, it's going to be incredible. Now, I've been treating the Odin 3 like it's just one device, when it's actually 4 very different propositions, each targeting different use cases and budgets. So if you're determined to get one as a future-proofing investment, or you just want to show off how much money you've got, either way, let's talk about which configuration makes sense for different scenarios. We'll start with the entry-level model, though I have to question the 8GB configuration. Most Snapdragon 8 Elite phones are shipping with 12GB as their baseline, so 8GB feels tight by current standards. It also comes with UFS 3.1 storage instead of the faster UFS 4 found in the higher models. But here's the real question: why buy 8GB in this when the Odin 2 and the Thor exist at the same time? Where's the extra processor power actually going to be useful with the same amount of RAM? The Odin 2 already handles PS2, GameCube and Switch emulation beautifully, and for those systems the Elite's extra horsepower is essentially wasted. The scenarios where you'll actually benefit from the Elite's power, more demanding Switch titles with HD texture packs, and look, not all Switch, as a good amount of the library should be open up eventually, but some Switch, PS3, better Windows performance through WinLater, are where you would want that extra memory headroom in the first place. The 128GB of storage is tight by today's standards. You'll definitely need a microSD card from day one, so you're paying $299 for a configuration that can't really showcase what makes the Elite special, whilst dealing with all of the current driver headaches at the same time. It's hard to see the value proposition here, although that could change if the right drivers are released. The Pro model jumps to 12GB of RAM and 256GB of UFS 4 storage for an extra $50, and this makes much more sense than its base model. That extra RAM provides meaningful breathing room for demanding emulators and Android's increasingly sophisticated background management. The additional memory becomes especially important for emulators that benefit from large caches, things like shader compilation, or when running more memory-intensive emulator cores. The jump to 256GB storage is also significant. It's enough space for a solid collection of Android games, plus your essential ROM libraries, without immediately requiring extra storage, but you probably will want it at some point. Performance-wise, the Pro will handle everything the base can do, but with more headroom for demanding scenarios. Switch emulation will benefit from the extra RAM, and there are interesting rumours of Windows 11 ARM running on Snapdragon 8 Elite devices. Though let me be crystal clear here. Do not buy the Odin 3 expecting Windows support. These are unconfirmed rumours and should be taken with a pinch of salt. My feeling is that the Pro model represents the real base configuration for serious users. You're buying cutting-edge technology, and this is where you start to feel the benefits of that cutting edge once the software ecosystem catches up. The Max, with 16GB of RAM and 512GB of storage, takes things to the next level. 16GB of RAM is genuinely overkill for most current Android emulation, but it's not overkill for the cutting-edge projects that might become viable over the next year or two. This is where you get the memory headroom that PS3 emulation might benefit from. If you're interested in experimenting with demanding titles, the Max provides the resources that those emulators are going to eventually need. The 512GB of storage provides a modicum of freedom. You can install multiple large Android games and keep substantial ROM collections locally without constantly juggling what to delete. The Max is also the minimum configuration I would want if Windows installation becomes viable. Windows 11 ARM really wants 16GB of RAM to run smoothly, especially with x86 emulation running on top. But again, this is all speculation for the future. Now, I use WinLater a lot on the Portal Max, and that extra RAM does make a noticeable difference. You should see the same benefits here with even better performance thanks to the more powerful processor. The Max targets serious emulation enthusiasts who want the best bang for their buck while still staying ahead of the curve. And then there's the Ultra with 24 gig of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage. The 24 gig of RAM is overkill for current Android gaming, but this kind of memory will likely become valuable as emulation pushes boundaries. Think, I don't know, maybe PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, potential visualization scenarios, or again, Windows 11 ARM with demanding x86 games running simultaneously. And whilst you won't see a benefit today, 24 gig positions you for whatever memory-hungry applications are just around the corner. The real immediate value here is the storage jump. For an extra $100 over the max, you're getting double the storage. And with 1 terabyte of fast storage, you might not need an SD card initially, certainly until you start doing those higher-end tasks like Windows gaming. Just keep in mind that with potential tariffs on imported devices, that $100 upgrade could end up costing you significantly more than the equivalent SD card. If you're planning to keep this device for several years and want maximum flexibility for whatever demanding scenarios develop, the Ultra's pricing makes sense. This is future-proofing in the truest sense of the word. You're buying headroom for applications that don't actually exist yet, but very probably will. Ultimately, whatever decision you make, people have a way of making their purchasing decisions work for them. And you'll have your own reasons to buy or not to buy. They said my acting lessons were a waste of money. But here's where I stand. I'm not getting one. And if I'm being honest, if I'm being an honest reviewer, I'd have to recommend that you don't get one either. At least not right now. And look, this isn't about the hardware. AYN will deliver excellent build quality. They always do. This is about the software reality. The fundamental issue is that you are not buying a gaming device. You're buying a really expensive development kit that might become a great gaming device eventually. 6 months from now, this conversation will probably seem silly. But today, the software just isn't ready for the hardware that AYN's built. My advice is simple. If you want a premium handheld that actually plays games today, stick with the Thor or the Odin, or just go and get a Steam Deck. They're all incredibly capable and the software works as well as anything else on the market. If you're dead set on the Odin3, do not sell your current device to fund it. You'll need something reliable whilst waiting for the compatibility to catch up. The Odin3 represents the future of Android handheld gaming. And when the drivers mature, this is going to be phenomenal. But today, you're paying premium prices for potential rather than performance. And sometimes the smart money waits. What do you think? Are you planning to grab those early bird prices, or are you happy to wait and see how the software develops? And how many beans make 5? Leave your comments in the comments section. That's what it's there for after all. And that's it for this video. If you found any of it helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more of the same. And for other things that are slightly different. But until next time, happy gaming.